we're going to go ahead and get started here. This is our second seminar, day one, Apparel Textile Sourcing Virtual. Second time doing this. We have with us this morning, at least in the United States morning, Mr. Wilson Zhu. He is the Chief Operations Officer at Li&Fung. His talk today will be about battling the trade war and COVID-19, rethinking global supply chains in a time of crisis. Wilson, thank you for coming back. It's great to see you in Berlin. It's good to see you now over the computer screen. So very excited what you have to say about the global supply chain in today's world. Just a quick note for all of our attendees, please go ahead and use the chat function or the Q&A to start submitting your questions as Mr. Zhu is presenting, and we will address them at the end of the seminar. So we're good to go.
Okay, so let me share the screen first. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, good morning and good evening. I'm in Shenzhen, China. So it's 11 o'clock in the evening. And let me basically talking about the supply chain. And I think everybody agree now it's a time of crisis. First of all is the trade war, right? We all know about it. It happened right before the COVID-19, and it's getting worse and worse, and even during the COVID-19. But it all started by talking about trade deficit. But as it becomes more and more clear, it is not a trade deficit. It is really become so clear. It is a strategic trust deficit by the two biggest economy and the nations on earth. There's very little strategic trust, or less and less so. If you look at trade deficit, it is very, very ironic because in 2017, there are 16 billion trade deficit caused by iPhone made in China. But if you look at the value added by the Chinese manufacturers in China, it's only 3.6%. Okay. However, that the current international rule will decide, yeah, this over $200 FOB iPhone is counted 100% as trade deficit. Just this item contributed $16 billion of trade deficit. Is this made in China? No. Is it made in China? Yes, based on the country of origin rule. So it's unbelievable how outdated and irrelevant this international trade rule we are following, and it becomes the cause of the huge international conflict. This is my favorite quote, right? And we really don't understand China. When you talk about a supply chain, you have to talk about trade war and China. So when one has spent a week in China, he quickly writes a book. But when he spends a month in China, he writes only an article, because he or she will realize how complicated it is in China. But if he or she spends 1 year in China, boy, he or she will write nothing. Why? Because China is so complicated. And as I understand, because I spent my first half year in China, and then the next half, first half of my life in China, and the second half in the United States, frequently travel between the two nations, I still couldn't understand China. And here's a especially book I want to mention, is Death of China, Death by China. That created a lot of confusion. One of the other, my favorite quote is, when goods do not cross borders, soldiers will. So, ladies and gentlemen, in this room that we are all in international trade, we probably never thought that we're actually doing something much bigger. That is, we are working and helping to build a global peace, more than just international trade. Many, many years ago, when I took oath to become the American citizen, I didn't realize that I followed the judge together with my wife and read aloud the oath. Actually, I didn't understand what the judge said. When I went back and look on the internet and realize, boy, you know, if there's a war happen between United States and any other country, I will bear arms on behalf of the United States. Boy, I said, I better pick up my pen or my microphone and doing global trade to promote global peace. That's the very reason why I'm here today. Followed immediately is the COVID-19. This is an unprecedented pandemic, and it completely disrupts the global trade and the supply chain. If we have learned one lesson from this, two events happened at the same time. That is the wisdom of do not put all your eggs in one basket. Unfortunately, many people actually forgot about it. And so they failed to actually mitigate the risk by having more basket for their business. As far as I know, just individually, I know at least two sourcing executives lost their jobs. Why? Because they are blamed by their employer. Why? You put so many eggs in one basket, China, right? Well, many of us made the same mistake because China's basket is so big, so strong, so convenient, and lasted for so long, so nobody even worry about it. And we forgot about one of the major important functions of our organization is mitigate the risk. Clearly, this is a crisis. And I like John Kennedy said, when written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters. One represents danger and the other represents opportunity. So we already talked about danger, but where is the opportunity? First, let's look at the world. It is changing from the world factory to the borderless factory. The borders become so irrelevant. Think about it. The borders, the customers control, the passport, all these are political system and political products. If you look at production, who cares, right? Why you want to keep the production just within a border? So when we look at the global platform, now we see, wow, the world is no longer flat. Remember, we say the world is flat, it's so convenient for so many years, not anymore. And in 2004, this book was written, The World is Flat. And Li&Fung, the two brothers, actually wrote a book in 2007 that said, Competing in a Flat World. Well, the world is so flat, everything is so convenient, everybody come to China. Not anymore. 2019, there's a special report in the magazine basically called The World is Not Flat. So what do we do? Is this the end of Made in China? Yes and no. Let me explain. First of all, I'm not surprised, and you shouldn't, that China is gradually moving its production beyond the border. Let's look at the trend. First, in Great Britain, then United States, then Japan, then Korea, and followed by China. So even without China-US trade war, even without COVID-19, China will not be the world factory forever. It's moving because this historical trend tells us that's what's going to happen. Here's a picture when I was very young, 1989, my first job for American importer. And the boss basically said, go to Canton Fair, find manufacturers that can accept orders moved from Korea, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. That you have only one mission. So I went to Canton Fair and find many factories. Within a year, we moved 100% our production from Korea, Taiwan, and Hong Kong to China. 1989. Last time I went to Canton Fair is last year. So 30 years later, 2019. This time, our chairman said, Wilson, go to Canton Fair, find suppliers, only suppliers who have production outside China. This 30 years difference. Wow. However, you have to look at this migration of production in perspective. China is so big in the past 30 years, have become a huge world factory. And in China every year, the 20-foot container, TEU, the number has reached to 214 million. Put it into perspective, just Shanghai, the port, will be 40 million TEU. If we move merely 5%, we said get out of China 5%. If it goes, the 5% goes to India, that means India's global trade will go up 65%. Vietnam, big country, 70%. That means we need the entire world to absorb the migration of production from China. That's how impactful this migration will be. It's a historical, is big, and it will impact every one of us. What do we do? For China, it is not abandoning manufacturing. It is the transformation from made in China to managed by China. So far, what we have seen is $10 billion investment just for textile, invested in more than 100 countries by more than 1,000 Chinese companies. So made in China are crossing borders and become made in Egypt, made in Pakistan, made in Indonesia. That's the huge historical migration. This is what we do at Li&Fung. If you look at us, now we look at the map, we said, wow, we have China, we call it China region. We still have production, pretty big size, remained in China. And we have greater ASEAN region, we have Indian subcontinental region, we have Africa become a very important region, and we have Europe and Latin America. Each region have a different way, different core competency, so they not competing against each other. They actually support each other because each region have different capabilities and different trade agreement. So this is the global platform under our control to manage production from one country to another, for one customer to another. The blue color represents our market. For many, many years, we have North American market, Canada, United States, and Europe. Now, as you can see, we have China market. It's unbelievable 30 years ago to think about there's a market, consumer market called China. I will talk about it later a little bit more. So the production is borderless. All depends on what our customer wants. It's no longer a world factory. This is the Li&Fung's strength. We have global office and presence all over the place and diversify the risk, mitigate the risk, and providing product, service to our customers. You may have already heard the word called dual circulation. That means domestic circulation and international circulation for Chinese government. This is not a buzzword. This is a real, one of the most important strategy and initiative of the Chinese government. So China also become from world factory to world market. If you watch the news, then JD, one of the biggest e-commerce retailer, recently invested in Li&Fung. Together, we are going to build global digital supply chain as well as world-class private brand. So I call this blue ocean opportunity. Think about it. For many years, Li&Fung are focusing on China and the US market, US and Europe market. Now, in the backyard of our factory, we realize there's a big consumer market. As a matter of fact, before we even realize, and China already become the largest, also at this time, the fastest growing consumer market. So when you think about move production out of China, think twice. Ask yourself, will my brand or my company go into this biggest consumer market? If the answer is yes, then you have to think about your supply chain one more time. Let's talk about the recovery. And the economists always say we have all different shapes of the recovery. But one country clearly leading that recovery, that's China. So it's interesting, recently we actually noticed there's a migration orders coming from India to China. Why? Because the pandemic hit India so bad that some of the orders have to move back. We even see orders moving back from Vietnam to China. How long this will last, I don't know. But one clear lesson, don't put all eggs in one basket. Then look at China local market. China's Golden Week, national holiday, 1 week just finished. Sales goes through the roof. And the Chinese, another shopping holiday called Double 11. It's almost like Black Friday in the United States, and are also coming. And people are predicting sales are really coming back to the pre-pandemic time. So this economy is really recovering very, very fast. Now let's look at China market. If you want to do business in China, watch this. The traditional model is the way you used to sell to the China market, right? You ship the goods from countries, you produce them from Pakistan, Vietnam, to China. You pay the duties, you sell to the Chinese consumer. There's a new model that's very, very funny, that products are produced all over the place, shipped back to the United States or Canada, and then cross-border model, small parcels shipped to China, and you can imagine how much time and how much cost and for this model. But it become a big business. And then the right-hand picture, you can see today, we are ready to produce in China for China. Where on the earth you have the luxury to produce consumer goods for consumers in the same country? Not anymore. In India, you don't have that consumer market yet. In the United States, you cannot afford to produce products in the United States. So this is a huge opportunity if your company is looking at China as a market. It's very interesting, we can see that we still have very strong capability and production capability and know-how in this country. Technology is booming in every industry, including apparel. Look at this pair of jeans, and this is how it is washed. recently, actually just last week, I was visiting a factory in Ningbo, China. I started my career in suits business. This is the most complicated garment products, right? We all know it's very complicated. Fusing, shoulder pad, all that, and most difficult garment to make. 1.5 years ago, when I was visiting a suits factory in Vietnam, I was so surprised to see the factory in Vietnam was not much different than the factory that I was running in China 30 years ago. Pretty much the same. That's why they moved the production from China to Vietnam, because the labor cost is cheaper. But this factory, also for tailored clothing, for suits in China, it's what they call 5G AI factory. When I compare this factory against the factory in Vietnam, it's day and night, but it's very, very similar, like the car factory that I visited for Benz Mercedes in Germany a few years ago. It is unthinkable. And the manufacturing is, and the technology is really enabling the manufacturing to change, transform from what 30 years ago to the future. I can almost assure that factories like this will be able to produce products, consumer products, right there in Europe, in America, because technology. You really don't need so many workers and cheap labor anymore. It's interesting that recently I read a research report basically saying, well, will manufacturing jobs for garments be able to create other middle-class economy? Very, very difficult. China is one, and Vietnam may be the last one. This reminds me of a famous quote of Zaki Yamani, who served as the country's oil minister and also minister for OPEC for more than 25 years. He said, the Stone Age did not end because the world ran out of stones. And the oil age will not end because we ran out of oil. What does that mean for us today? That means that technology will revolutionize, disrupt the supply chain and our industry. And we must change. And the future is now. Thank you. I'm ready to take questions from the audience.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Zhu. That was quite informative and quite articulate, as always. Let's see here. Don't have any questions in. I'm going to check my other feed and see if we have any coming in from Facebook.
Sure.
It always amazes me every time I hear an update about the global supply chain and where manufacturing is moving and how quickly the Chinese the market and manufacturing is changing so rapidly. In every 6 months, it seems to make a giant leap in one direction. And,
Yeah.
you know, especially the emergence of the Chinese middle class. It's going to be really interesting to see, as you said, with the ability to manufacture and produce products for the same people in the country is hasn't been seen in quite a while, I think.
Yeah.
So thank you again for that very informative speech or presentation. I don't have any questions in here. Do we have any more questions from Mr. Zhu?
Obviously, I answered all the questions in my presentation.
That's generally what that means, yes. Okay. Well, Mr. Zhu, did you have any closing remarks or anything else you'd like to say?
No, I just want to tell everyone, I told the board and the senior management team of Li&Fung. I basically said this. I said many, many times that, the China-US trade war and the COVID-19, especially when they, coming together, are the perfect, best gift that this company of 114 years history received. Why? Because it sends such a strong message. We have to change. So after 2 years joining Li&Fung, this is the first time I have seen the strongest sense of urgency of the company, of the industry, and of our customers, of our suppliers, are really become so obvious because they know they have to change, and otherwise that their life and their business will be disrupted and they may not even exist. So personally, I think this is exactly what JFK said. The crisis come together with the danger is the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Zhu. All right, thank you everybody for sitting in on this presentation, and we will see you in the next one here at the top of the hour. Thank you again, Mr. Zhu. You have a great evening.
Bye-bye.